Good morning and welcome to our District Arts Education Leaders Town Hall meeting that we are excited to have with you today, focused on the Arts Ed graduation requirement. There is a bit.ly in the chat and down at the bottom of each slide that is our slide deck that you can follow along and access later if you wish. Just a moment to introduce ourselves again, but you probably all know who we are by now. And I'm Sayward Grinley, your dance and visual arts consultant. Brandon Rader is your music and theater arts consultant. And we are your Arts Ed team, along with our fabulous section chief for social studies and arts education, Dr. Lori Major Carlin. And I'll let her say hi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's nice to see a couple of names that we've seen just recently. So thanks again for being with us. And I hope that I know that this information will be helpful for you and for your schools.
All right. Well, today we are going to go over what the new law for the Arts Ed graduation requirement says. We're going to take a look at the implementation process of all graduation requirements, including ours. Then we're going to go ahead and open it up for your questions, and then we'll get to our closing. So today our presentation goals are to understand what's actually in the law, understand what the School Board of Ed policies governing the graduation plan process are, understand the current Arts Ed graduation requirement implementation plan, and then have you guys share concerns and challenges with this graduation requirement with us so that we can really truly understand what your needs are. All right, so teacher leadership specialists in North Carolina are evaluated yearly on 5 standards, and today we are focusing on standard 1, which is that teacher leadership specialists demonstrate leadership, and that's why you're here today, is to really show us at the state level what you need from us at the local level.
If you were with us last spring, then you know about Suzanne Daly and her Teach Happier mission for educators to resist toxic positivity and engage in small shifts that change our thinking in order to make us happier in our work and home lives. If you missed that session, we highly recommend you watching the recording, which you can access at the link on the screen there, and we'll post that in the chat as well. One of those small shifts that she talked about is making sure that we refill our own cups by practicing gratitude. So what small thing are you grateful for today? It could be coffee. It could be getting in front of the elementary school drop-off line. It could be a funny TikTok video that your friend sent you. Anything is perfect. So go ahead and share that with us in the chat and introduce yourself just so we know who all is here today. All right, I see Cheryl says family. Wendy says cool fall air. Laura says my 2 19-year-old boys drove down from Boone for a concert last night and she got to have coffee with them this morning. That's fantastic. Meredith Jones from Watauga County is grateful for having beautiful changing leaves outside and pumpkin spice creamer in coffee. Grandbabies, caring friends, good health. Grateful for coffee for sure. Colleagues and friends supportive during challenging times. And of course, James's puppy dog, Tippy, and a good night's sleep. Thank you all for sharing that with us. And just a little side note that according to Robert Dunlop in his book, Strive for Happiness in Education, happy people are 31% more productive and have 23% more energy and are 3 times more creative. So we hope that you continue to find gratitude in all that you do. Now we're going to dive into the law and I'm going to hand it back over to Brandon.
All right. So 12 years ago, the North Carolina Arts Education Task Force, led by Representative Carney and Senator Dorsett, presented the idea of comprehensive arts education plan. And this original incarnation brought forth the idea of arts as a required part of a well-rounded education consisting of equal parts of arts education, integration, and exposure. And you all know that within North Carolina, that's the framework that we use. That CAE task force originally created the Comprehensive Arts Education Report with recommendations for improving the state of arts education in North Carolina. One of those recommendations was the arts education graduation requirement. And by the way, you can access all of the legislative reports on the original 2010 CAE task force and the 2012 CAE commission by clicking on that link on the screen. Now, very few of those recommendations were actually taken up, but after years of arts education graduation requirement bipartisan support, without an adopted law, Senate Bill 681 passed in June of 2020 and became Session Law SL 2020-78. So if you see that, that's the law that includes lots of things, but does also include the arts ed graduation requirement. This is exciting news for all of arts educators and practitioners in North Carolina. And as the bill traveled along and winding road to the passage, there are many misconceptions and outdated views of what exactly it is and what it means for K-12, which is why we're here. So in the most basic distillation of the law, students who enter grade 6 in 2022 or later will be required to take at least one arts education course during their 6 through 12 educational experience. The law also gives NCDPI the authority to establish the criteria for the requirement, how it's tracked, what courses count, and the timeline for implementation. Your Arts Ed team, which is us, along with the Department of Natural and Cultural Resource partners who make up that comprehensive arts education team, is also going to be required to give a report to the General Assembly on how well comprehensive arts education is being implemented in our state. And as part of the requirement, we are revisiting the original implementation report, and we'll be rolling out exciting opportunities for our schools, teachers, and students. And we'll get to some of those other things a little later in today's meeting.
So now how do we implement all of this? Well, even though this is a new process for us in arts education, public school units across the state go through a process of changing and applying graduation requirements every single year. Your LEA is set up to handle this change already, as is the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. There are strict policies and regulations in place which guide our work to ensure that the requirement will be implemented with fidelity. At this time, our working group is engaged in ensuring that every student's completion of the arts education graduation requirement will be tracked through course codes in PowerSchool as part of the established graduation plan process, which is called NCSBOE Policy Grad 004. Students will be able to complete this graduation requirement at any time within their 6th through 12th grade education. Only those courses with officially recognized course codes, so we're going to stress that again, officially recognized course codes, those are the ones starting with a 5, will be automatically tracked in PowerSchool and checked off for this requirement. Here is the estimated timeline of the implementation plan. So you can see what has already mostly been accomplished over on the left-hand side in 2020 and 2021. And then we are, of course, heading into everything on the right-hand side, starting with 2022 and into those following years. So just take a second to glance through this timeline and see where you might have some questions. Good, and remember you can come back to this slide at any time just to check it out as we move forward. So that is slide 15 if you want to come back for your reference. So students moving from another state to North Carolina in the 9th grade or later may be exempt from this arts education graduation requirement if requiring them to do so would keep them from graduating along with the same cohort which they are assigned. So given the differences in graduation requirements from state to state, sometimes their schedules just may not allow a student who has carefully followed a previous system's requirements the opportunity to take 1 credit of arts education. And we try to understand that, and so those exceptions could be made. Instead of preventing a student from graduating with their class just to take that 1 credit of arts education in the fall, a student can be made exempt from this graduation requirement, allowing them to graduate on time without an arts education credit. But those are very rare exceptions. Except for this extreme circumstance, every effort should be made to enroll every student in at least 1 credit of arts education. So this means that it is absolutely imperative that you use the correct course codes for your students, because if they're not being filed under the correct course codes, it will not count and then will cause problems for them later on. Do not use the course codes beginning with a 9. You can learn more about that on the NCDPI Arts Education course coding structure at the bit.ly that we will place in the chat. It is bit.ly/NC Arts Ed course manual. So we'll place that in the chat here for you. And more information regarding which course codes will apply to the requirement will be provided later this school year.
Great, thank you. So one thing that we also should stress is that the standard course of study does not change for the courses that you already have in place. We do not need to ask 6th, 7th, and 8th grade arts teachers to teach the high school standard course of study. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standard course of study actually does satisfy this requirement. So if you are looking for more information, you can check out the article that the North Carolina Music Educators Association put together and published in their most recent fall magazine. And I believe the theater arts educators have published that on their website, and it's going to be coming out in NCDEO and NCAEA shortly. We'll also be putting together an FAQ document based on the questions that you ask us today. All right. So 2 other steps we're taking to more fully implement the Comprehensive Arts Education Plan are listed here. Creating an Arts Ed Diploma endorsement is a straightforward process, but one that we'd love your input on. So if your LEA has some sort of recognition program or structure celebrating student achievement in arts education, we'd love to know. You can go ahead and drop that into the chat or shoot us an email later on so that we can understand what that structure is that you already have in place. We've also been collaborating nationally with other states who have arts education diploma seals or endorsements, and we want to know what you are doing to align what they're doing and what is already happening in the state with our state requirements. If you have those, again, please drop us a note in the chat or send us an email later. Several of the other recommendations in the implementation plan have failed because they would take an act of law or would require punitive measurements for an LEA who does not comply. However, where the stick has failed, we hope that the carrot will prevail. We are looking to create an arts education rubric, which would guide LEAs and schools toward advancing arts education programs towards excellence and providing equitable access for all of North Carolina's 1.5 million students. We are also exploring the possibility of awarding schools and LEA designations based on their level of achievement on the rubric, similar to the way that global education and STEM schools are recognized here in North Carolina. Maryland is actually currently rolling out an Arts Rich program school designation, and we'll be closely monitoring the success its success. So we would love to hear about your thoughts about these 2 diploma endorsements and the rubric. You can go ahead and raise your hand or drop it into the chat, or feel free to unmute. I believe we are a small enough group that we could have that. So since there are no objections, we will move forward into our open forum. So we just wanted to share how we're going to run this today is by using the Q&A panel. If you have questions or comments that you would like to share, it would be great if you can, well, let's see. So over on the where you have your participants in chat, you should find the dead snowman, which is what we call the three dots sitting next to each other. And if you click on that, you should be able to see the Q&A function. This should be available to you regardless if you're on the web app, the mobile version, or if you are actually on the downloaded WebEx platform. Once you open the Q&A panel, you can select who you'd like to ask on the drop-down menu, and you can type your question into the message box. It does say that there's a 512 character limit. I hope that nobody's gonna, tweet at us 4 times question, but if you run out, feel free to just let us know that you have something that you'd like to say. And then you can hit send and we'll see those questions and we will answer those questions for you now. If you have specific questions for your LEA, that's perfectly fine because that's literally what we're here to figure out. So
And just to note, the little dead snowman that he mentioned, there are 2 of those at the bottom of your screen. So you want to go all the way to the one on the far right by the little chat bubble, not the one that's near the emojis.
Thank you. All right, so James is asking about current diploma endorsements at the state level. There are 5 endorsements. Brandon, do you know them all off the top of your head?
Hey, good morning.
Brandon Young is I was gonna say is our expert in this department who is joining us today. So Brandon, do you know what all of those endorsements are?
Yes, and they're located in SB Policy Grad 007. And there are the following. There's the career endorsement, the college endorsement, the college/UNC endorsement, the North Carolina Academic Scholars endorsement, and the Global Languages endorsement.
That's right. So since there is already a structure in place, we have met with Brandon and the team of experts on that process and are working internally between Lori Sayward and I to compile the information we've received from other states on their endorsements. Some of them call them seals, some of them call them endorsements. So that's why we'd love to hear if any LEAs are doing anything locally so that we can align or work to align as best we can what's coming down from or what we would implement at the state level.
Brandon Young, do you happen to have a link to where those endorsements are listed? If not, I can look for one.
Yes, let me throw that in the chat for y'all.
That's great. Thank you.
So Laura, I see your question as we're getting that link. There we go. Brandon just dropped it in. That's Brandon Young, by the way. And she says our 6th grade 9-week rotation arts courses are currently coded with a 5. Does this very limited time in an arts course fulfill the requirement for graduation? That's a great question, and we can take that back. One of the things that we've been exploring is whether or not rotation, well, actually, Laura, maybe you can unmute and answer this question that I have for you. Are you saying that kids are enrolled in a year-long series of 9-week courses, or that a kid can just take 9 weeks in 6th grade and be done with arts?
Right, that's what I'm asking. So we have some intermediate schools and some middle schools. So some of our 6th graders are in an intermediate school, a 5-6 school, and they rotate between the different classes. Like they might have art for 9 weeks and Spanish for 9 weeks and
Okay.
CTE offering, right?
So what we have put in place is we've been referring to them as wheels. And so a wheel that includes Spanish or tech or PE we had thought and understood that that was coded as 1 year-long course where they just changed. And so that would be a 9 course. Overall, it would be like a wheel. That would be a 9. But are you saying that they are enrolled in literally 9-week courses that are the different codes?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know that that's how it's being used. And we will take that back to our team, implementation team,
Great.
to
Thanks.
figure out the answer.
Awesome.
This is Cheryl. So my question that I put in the chat refers to the same thing. That's why I'm unmuting myself. But Winnie and I were concerned about the same thing, and I think we went ahead and we talked to our power school, and we changed those wheel course codes to be something else besides a 5. I can't remember what they are. They're probably a 9, but because we have enough options available. Our thought process was there's enough options available that they could take a semester or a year long, and we'd prefer for that to be the graduation credit instead of the wheel.
So I was going to say, one of the things that we had discussed in order to, because there is a large amount of control at the local level for you guys to be able to make those decisions. The way that we have drafted the policy currently says that the standard course of study should be taught in its entirety in order to satisfy this requirement. So if there is a 9-week course in dance that teaches the standard course of study in its entirety, then it should satisfy the requirement. In my brain, that seems like that's a 3-hour class that meets every single day, right? Whereas a 9-week course that meets for 30 minutes every day probably is not teaching the entire standard course of study. So that is the language that we currently have drafted for the school board policy to give guidance on whether or not it should be counted as fulfilling the graduation requirement.
That's great.
Yeah. I have a couple of concerns. One, 6th graders can take band all year or orchestra all year, but art, chorus in some schools and others not. I guess I'm just worried about students gravitating towards one or the other if it counts towards a graduation requirement, or the opposite end, seniors that all of a sudden don't have anything because they were in CTE or agriculture. And then all of a sudden our teachers are being asked to teach like a general music class. So anyway, those are just some of my concerns, which are things that I can, obviously advocate for students. I mean, I told my principals that it starts in kindergarten, with the love of the arts, and it's up to our elementary schools to get students to want to take the arts courses in middle school and high school. But anyway, I'm just speaking out loud of some of my thoughts in my head.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. So part of this too is that students don't have to satisfy it in 6th grade, right? They can satisfy it in 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th or 11th or 12th. So that was a big change from the original proposal that said 9 through 12, specifically so that we weren't flooding the school systems or the high school systems with beginning level art and general music and such. So that was the hope. I believe that when we pulled the data in the past, 97% of students were satisfying this requirement already. And I was going to pull the most recent data before we present to the school board in a couple months. So I can share that number with you, Laura, if you'd like. We can take a look at that. Meredith, I see your comment about curriculum leaders getting everything about the course codes. And yes, that's part of the actual structure that exists within DPI and graduation requirements. Graduation requirements are often updated every single year. And so there's a whole process of when that package comes out and who is involved. And so that will include school counselors and curriculum leaders at the district level and principals. And we'll make sure that everybody is aware of the information, both through like the listservs and emails that go out and official documentation. And then we'll also hold several webinars about the implementation of this graduation requirement. And that might even be packaged with other graduation requirements if they are implemented at the same time. So even though this feels super new to us, there are people at your central office who are dealing with graduation requirement changes all the time. And I'll just take this wait time to say that if you are watching this as a recording and you have a question that you would like to reach out to us, our emails are listed on the last slide of the presentation, and you can certainly reach out with any questions that you have.
So Cheryl's asking what are some of the requirements for the endorsements, and that is definitely something that we are still brainstorming and working on. We are comparing, like Brandon said, to several other states that have already done this in their states and looking at, well, what does this state require and what does this one require and what do we like out of each of those? So some examples of things that we're touring with are, you know, a certain number of arts classes that they need to have, the level of arts classes that they should be in, overall GPA within the arts classes, outside of school art experience of some sort. Maybe that is, you know, helping with a play, maybe it's leading a club of some sort, maybe it's winning an art contest, you know, it just depends. So we're trying to figure out how we would track that and kind of score it. Those are just some of the ideas and examples that we are toying around with, but we're open to suggestions or, hey, we think this is something that would be really important in requiring for the endorsement to happen.
And another thing along with that Arizona does is they recognize that there is a select, and I mean a select number of CTE courses that also could apply things like fashion design, and game design might be appropriate within this domain if they are also paired with our regular arts education courses. So you can't, or they have a structure where you can't just take those CTE courses and get an arts ed endorsement. It's kind of a multi-layer sort of two of this and one of those and sort of things. So we're just trying to explore all the options and see what people have within the state.
Theirs was something like either 4 arts ed classes or 3 arts ed and 1 CTE, or, you know, they gave examples of the various combinations that could qualify.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a state that might have some sort of portfolio, and they give different scores for different things that they see within that portfolio.
That's interesting that you bring that point up regarding CTE crossover. We find a lot of students that, like in music, who want to major in, say, music business or marketing or that kind of thing, or merchandising. They they do have business courses to take, but a lot of students who maybe are not the strongest players or singers try to get into those programs and cannot gain admission because their performance skills are not at the level to get into the studio teacher classes. So educating kids that want to go into areas besides teaching or performance, that might warrant a good discussion about the partnerships, helping them understand one goes with the other hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive. You can't just be a good guitar player in your rock band in the garage, but major in, you got to have some of the other skills too. So I know that's not completely germane to the topic here, but it does warrant exploring a little bit. And that might be a conversation to have with some of the higher ed institutions about, do they have any ideas of what an endorsement would help or encourage or discourage some of those types of, say, extracurricular, but side majors that are not predominantly education or performance in any of the arts fields.
Yeah, I think that's worth thinking about. In Arizona, they were specifically arts CTE courses like music production and game design and fashion design.
Yeah, there were a select few that could qualify or count towards that.
But that's what they're doing.
I love that idea, James, of reaching out to the institutions of higher ed and maybe doing a similar town hall that would be open to all of those programs, just to let them know this is the graduation requirement coming. And then for them to keep that in mind as they're looking at requirements for student entrances.
I think they have a vested interest in this because, we are preparing the kids to go to them for these majors. So they may have ideas, and they may say, no, don't go in the path of CTE for this reason or that reason. That might shed a different light on it than what some of the other states have done. But I do think at least asking for their thoughts, whether or not it's able to be used or not, would be appreciated.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I think the recognition of media arts as a rising field, and that most of those media arts classes either happen within the visual arts sphere or the CTE sphere right now, for most school districts in the nation, and trying to be inclusive of them for looking towards the future was the
Because
purpose.
most of the college programs consider that part of their arts programs.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Speaking of which, has
Go
North Carolina decided that are we gonna adopt digital media, media arts?
It's one of the things that when we look at, I apologize for the noise. When we look at revising standards, we will do a survey to the field and find out if there is a desire, if there's a need. We know that there is a need, but we don't know if it needs to be in CTE or in arts. That is one of the debates that's existing right now. So it is a conversation that's being had, but we have no answers for you at this point.
Okay, because we in CMS, we have, I have a full pathway of courses for middle school and high school that we're doing for digital media arts, and we're about to publish our media arts curriculum guide. We're following the standard course of study for visual arts, but also the national standard course of study, which, nationally it's listed as an art. So, I would love to have a conversation with you about that, because in CMS we would love for it to have a dedicated standard course of study for it. So
Well, and that's the great thing about the local arts codes, is that you certainly can use locally developed standards or the NCAS standards in media arts and call them local courses. At this point, though, we would not include locally developed courses in the list of course codes that satisfy the Arts Ed graduation requirement. because we don't have any sort of ability to know what those courses are.
So Cheryl, it's a great thing that you guys have that in the works, and we will certainly be relying on you if we are able to move forward with it. But at this time, like Brandon said, because it will be a local course code, it wouldn't work for this graduation requirement. But we can certainly continue that conversation when we start talking about standards.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to question then because they're listed, it's listed under a specialized visual arts course right now.
Then you're good. If you are satisfying the visual arts
Right.
standard course of study and the NCAS standards,
Yeah.
which is what I think you said, then you'd
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah, not NCAS, it's the national arts standards for media arts.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
same thing.
Okay.
Great. Awesome. Well, so if anybody else has any more questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. This is just a quick summary of the information we've gone over today. The only change in the graduation requirement is that students will need to complete an arts education course in one of the 4 arts disciplines between 6th and 12th grades. That's everybody starting in 6th grade of 2022 or later. You will probably see that the official policy actually states those entering 9th grade in 2025, because that is how the board policies are written, is when they enter the 9th grade. And then the exceptions are that only those transferring from out of state and who would otherwise not be able to graduate on time would be exempt from this. And we are responsible for creating this or figuring out how this will be implemented, and then giving a report on the state of comprehensive arts education to the Joint Oversight Committee on Education in the winter of 2022. Yes.
And we are also working with the Exceptional Children's Division on making sure that this requirement is for all students. So it will be in their graduation requirement as well.
Thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot to put that in here. Great. So really quickly, just to chat about professional development, though our webinars in the past have focused on teacher pedagogy, this year we're really taking a step back and up to focus on empowering district arts education leaders to build local arts education capacity. So we plan to cover these topics with the district leaders, though everybody is invited to attend the webinars, including all of you. So we'll start with supporting neurodiverse students in arts education, meeting the needs of English learners, building a positive teacher arts ed environment. And then the spring is to be announced. We're trying to make sure that we are meeting your needs. And so we're saving that one. We've got a few ideas in the works, but stay tuned for more information on the listserv. All right, Sayward is going to close us out.
Okay. So for our closure today, we want you to just take a look at this compass and answer any of these questions. You can just put one in the chat, whichever one that you would like to answer, but what either excites you about this work or this information today? What's the upside? Or what do you find worrisome about it, or the downside, or your concerns? What do you need to know or feel like you want moving forward? And the last option would be, what is your current stance on the opinion of this project or this requirement, we should say. And that could even be your next step or suggestions that you have at this point. So the S, you could pick a couple of different ways to answer that one. So choose any of those and feel free to share with us how you're feeling right now. We hope that you gained some valuable information and it has your wheels turning to continue moving forward with this process.
All right, we've got excited that it's finally come to fruition after 12 long years of talking about it. And oh, I lost it.
Oops.
Oh yeah, it's a great step. Excited to be at the table. I'm worried about access for all students to rich arts courses. Excited for the future of the arts. Awesome. Supporting the importance of arts education to an overall education. Formerly a part of the secondary students' education.
This is great. Thank you all so much.
Great. All right. I am going to drop the code here for you for our closing or for your survey. This ensures that you get your PD certificate and helps drive the conversation for the future. Please let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what could be improved, and what other topics you'd like us to meet about in the future. You can use the QR code just with your phone, or you can click the survey link in the chat or on the screen. And then it is no longer immediately automated. You should expect your CEU certificate sometime tomorrow. And thank you so much for being with us here today. If you have completed your survey, you are welcome to leave, and we will see you next time.